But now we have our next talk, and I think you're all here for that. Product Map Framework, the elements of product management. And our next speaker has 20 plus years of experience in building digital products. We have a lot of very experienced people here. He is now the CPO at Project A Ventures, a venture capitalist that you might know. And he's a former product manager at Rocket Internet. And I'm really looking forward to his talk. Please, with all the joy you can bring to the table, welcome Tamer El-Hawari.
Thanks. Oh, hi everyone. Oh, wait a second. Fuck, now I spoiled it. Sorry for that. So, the elements of product management. How can we build better products? I mean, you've probably saw this one as the password for the Wi-Fi. And this is a question that also drove me most when I started my career in product management. I always wanted to create better products. So, of course, probably like many of you, you started in product management, and I also tried to learn everything that I could about product management. I tried to learn everything about how design and user experience works. I learned about typography, on how you run actually Scrum and the agile methodologies, how you can design architecture on a technical side, and all these kind of things. And over the time, I just learned at some point of times I didn't make any additional progress on building better products when I was just reading another framework or looking at this another blog post. I said okay, I can do all this kind of things. I can add things on top, but how can I actually build better products? And at some point of time, I said okay, let's step back for a second. Let's not look into the future, but let's look into the past. And take the question, how do we actually build products right now? And if you start with this one, of course, there's a couple of things that we are doing. We need to organize our Jira. We need to design our design sprints or make a good testing environment. And sometimes product managers test also things. We're running A/B tests. We're doing user interviews, data analysis. We are using the business model canvas because we think our business model is not right and we need to get it up and running. There's a big topic about design systems and accessibility and funnel analysis and product strategies, opportunity solution trees and whatnot. And sometimes we just also need to drink a coffee, just relax and think about what we're doing here. How are we supposed to build products in this kind of thing? Right? I mean, it's all things that we need to master, that we need to be good at. You can really screw up the entire business if you're not doing a good user interview. Or you can screw up everything in your design if you're not focusing enough on how you create a consistent user experience. And a couple of learnings that I would like to share with you. And the first one is that you're actually never work alone. For me, it was something where I said, I'm the product manager, I am creating the product. And then I learned, no, it's actually the product team that should create the product. But then over time, I learned that it's actually not the product team that's creating the product. It's a big part of the organization. Everyone is in there. And for me personally, it was very relieving to not see the stakeholder as an enemy that wants to destroy my product, but seeing them as over-ambitious little product managers that are not so experienced. So in the end, formulating this product positively, you will never work alone, right? The second thing is that everything is connected. I learned that the selection of typography drives the legibility, and this legibility in the end makes sure that we convey our value proposition and USP message on the homepage in the right way, or how an idea is actually being transferred into some kind of concept, how it just wins the backlog game and the prioritization and finally gets shipped to the user. So everything that we're doing, all these little things and frameworks that we do are just actually connected to each other, needs to be playing together to be good. And last but not least, I think it's just a beautiful mess. At least I love it a lot, right? It's just so chaotic, so environmental. We can do so many things, and I really love that. Maybe some words to me and my background. So I'm currently the CPO at Project A Ventures, and for those who don't know Project A, Project A is a operational VC, as we call ourselves. So on the one side, we have a VC. We have roughly $1 billion asset under management, and we invest in startups, mainly seed and Series A companies. And we have the specialty that we have 150 people in the field of product management, design, marketing, sales, engineering, data, sales, and whatever you need that actually works exclusively for our ventures to support them. And I've been there already for over 10 years now, and I've had the lucky chance to see a lot of companies and work with them together. And in this kind of like environment, I was really working with a different variety of companies. Like there's e-commerce in there, there is ad tech, there is, I don't know, robotics sometimes, real estate. There's a lot of like varieties that you can see in here. And this gave me the chance to actually see the different patterns, things that work and what didn't work in specific company and environments. And for us, it's actually when we work together with our ventures, we sometimes do really operational work. So even if I'm the CPO, I'm still sometimes writing tickets. Not that often anymore, but I still like to do it, or run a user interview. Or we do a lot of coachings with one of the like great product leaders in this kind of companies. Some of them became unicorns. Some of them also failed totally. And when I'm talking to all these product people and product managers in that kind of companies, or if I'm myself in the situation, we often tackle very, very hard problems. Like, hey, our delivery is bad. We're not shipping anything. What's wrong here? Or the team totally lost the direction. We don't know where to go. Or I need to train my product people. What should I teach them? I don't know. Or something like, hey, we need to become more customer-centric. And every time I'm discussing these kind of things with my peers, I figured out that I was just like in the first moment a little bit lost. All these kind of things, all the problems that we are facing in product management are sometimes very hard to crack. But discussing this one over time, realized that all the challenges that we are facing are actually have the same set of underlying elements. We talked a couple of things through, and we always came back to the same kind of like concepts that we are using. So at some point of time, we just like went back and said like, okay, why don't I write it down? And out of that one, I created this kind of like product map. And this was a tool for me, a mental model, to navigate actually the complexity of creating digital products. So I needed to have something that when I'm in a discussion or in a situation where I say like, what the fuck should I do here, right? I have something in my mind that just like doesn't let me freak out, but say, okay, this is how I go about it. So what is this? In the first place, we have the element, representing here the Lego brick, if you don't see it. And this kind of like element in itself is just simply a description and some kind of guiding questions. Each of the elements is big enough to like fill hours of just like knowledge, but they, for me, worked because they are small enough to be practical enough. And what we also did was we put them together into some kind of like fields of interest for a broader orientation. So the general question is, what should we supposed to do as a product manager? I mean, we are a jack of all trades, fixing every problem and even jumping into the problems if we don't have enough, I don't know. But I think it was important also for me personally to understand where do I need to tap into and where's just like not really my area, where do I not just like need to do something. So what are the 4 fields? The first thing that we have, and this is like coming over again, is we need to generate insights. We need to generate a lot of insights and making sure that we're interpreting these insights in the right way. We need to give a direction, which means we need to steer the team and making sure that we know where we want to go and how to get there. We also need to design and actively design the collaboration. How do we actually work together as a team, beyond, like, not only within the product team, but also like across the entire company? And last but not least, we need to create the product, which is about shaping some kind of like initial ideas and concepts, creating some experiments, and then finally shipping this kind of thing. So how does this kind of thing look like in the end? I hope it's big enough. So on the top, you can see all the 4 different major fields, which I just like take as this kind of structure. And of course, the first thing here in generating insights is we need to have a lot of market knowledge. We need to have understanding about the segments and the competition and the trends. But also, we need to deep dive into our users, understanding their user needs and behavior and all these kind of things. But we also need to understand way more, not just like the user. We need to understand how we want to bring this kind of like thing that we're building to the customer. How is our product in itself doing, and how do we select specific software? And for the direction, this is something, the concept that I like to call the product core. And this is one of my favorites. I'm going to deep dive into this one soon. So this actually says, like, okay, which kind of opportunity are we trying to chase? What's the problem that we're trying to solve? And what is the solution that we're providing? And you can suddenly start to see that concepts like the opportunity solution tree actually is represented in there, right? It's a combination of both of them. But I also think that a good problem solution fit is one thing, but you also need to drive some kind of uniqueness. How do you stick out towards competition? And last but not least, like, how do you drive value out of it for the customer and the business? I put it together on purpose. But there's more to it. There's goals and plans and initiatives, or general guidelines that help us to make decisions in situations that we couldn't foresee up front. There is the design and collaboration, where it's about the team, or the way we communicate the insights and the direction and the creation, plus a couple of more things. Last but not least, of course, we have the products itself, the creating of the products, where it's about creating the customer-facing side, or the back-end side. How do we deal with this one? Or how do we deal with the marketing side of it, not forgetting this part? So each of the elements, as I said, and I'm taking this example of trends because I think this is the most relevant element right now in this situation, the market is, you have a simple definition, like a trend is a general direction into what something is changing, developing, or veering towards. And this is a question that I like to ask myself, and going through this one, so like, what are currently general trends in the market? I mean, scaling down is a topic that is currently like happening in a lot of companies. What do we do with this one, right? But what are the technological innovations? I mean, you can think about crypto or machine learning or something like that one. Like, how can you include this into your product? Or what are general like macroeconomics or specific business trends in our market that plays a role? So now I just like told you about the concept and some of the elements, and of course it's too broad to actually go through everything in depth, but I've taken a couple of examples to tell you and show you a little bit how I'm dealing with this kind of like beautiful mess, how to apply this one in a real world case. And the very first thing that I like to do is, when I'm jumping into a new company, is doing some kind of quick assessment. Like, where do we stand with the product? I mean, people ask me, what do you think about the product? It's like, come on, it's a hard question. What should I do, right? But now I can actually go through it, run through the map, take each element, and ask myself two questions. How comfortable are we with this? Do we think we're good or not? Like, is there some kind of gap that we have? And how relevant is it maybe for us? And wait a second. Yeah. So we can actually go through it and say, like, okay, ask ourselves some questions. Do we know our users? I don't know. Some companies don't know that, especially startup environments, yeah? If you're very honest with you. Or do we know if we're successful? Like, we're launching a feature, but should we party because we launched it, or should we party because it just like really worked out well? Or do we share the insights that we're generating out of the research with our peers? Not sure if this happens really. Or can we actually scale with the technology that we had? If we have 100 users or 1,000 or 10,000 or 1 million users, how would this kind of behave in the setup? So simply using this one and helps us to get a first understanding of where we stand. You know, some things might be good. We feel good about the market, right? We feel good or medium about the segmentation that we have, but we know the competition quite well. So we can actually go through them and mark them. And if you now ask me, like, okay, where do you start? I mean, problems, we have millions of problems in product management. Like, for me, I like to start here, getting the opportunity, solution, uniqueness, and value creation right in the first place. Understanding where our gaps are. And I've seen companies that are going into hypergrowth, and the unified pattern here is that all these four elements been just like very well balanced out. Companies that have a struggle of growing often have issues in one of these kind of four areas. If I'm here, the next thing that I love to do is actually getting awesome in this part here. Because this is like, in my point of view, how you as a product manager can become empowered by knowing more than all the people in the room or in the company about like how is the user and how he behaves and what he wants and what he doesn't want. And then I typically like to move over there to just like make sure that we are focusing, right? We get so much distracted about all the possibilities that we can do, and it's so cool to get into this new idea and just like I say, like chasing this one, but rather, hey, let's focus. It's not part of it. I mean, you probably listened to the decision stack, right? This is exactly where this comes from. Saying no to things is super important. let me give you another example where the product map helps. We need to select two things. We have Epic A and we have Epic B. Two big features. Yeah? There's an advocate for Epic A and there's an advocate for Epic B. And we just like have it in our backlog or initiative or betting table. And a typical product manager would go through it and say, like, I have my scoring mechanism, RISE framework prioritization and whatnot, or like custom-made one. And he just like gives it a score. He uses his prioritization framework and says, like, cool, I know. Epic B is what we should build. But what happens a lot, at least in my daily business, is there is one hippo in the room that says, I don't think so. It's stupid. I want feature A because this is like what helps me make progress, and I'm going to be succeed about that one. And especially if it's a manager or someone who is like on a hierarchical level like above, it's going to be a hard discussion. Because then people will say like, yeah, your metrics is wrong, your estimates are wrong, everything. They will discuss a lot with you, leaving the product managers with not that much to actually think about it and do something about it. And what we can do, and by the way, I'm not saying that prioritization frameworks are bad. This is not what I'm saying. I'm still using them, just like to make sure. We can just like take the map and go through some of the elements and ask ourselves some questions. Does Epic A or Epic B contribute better to our goals? Or is it better aligned with our roadmap? Or which impact do we think is better for this kind of features? And what user needs do we actually solve with it? Or how do we create value for the business and the user? Right? And by that one, we can start to assess and put in another layer on top of it on the selection of a specific epic. And suddenly, if we are again in this discussion, we can say, hey, you know what? This is the goal that we all aligned on. Like if we really go for Epic A and not Epic B, I think Epic B is really better contributing to this. Or it's better part of our plans. Or I think we're going to generate more revenue or more whatever kind of impact we want to deal with. And there's another thing that can happen if you're going through this one, because it sounds that we all have these things in place. We have goals, we have plans, we know all these kind of things. But the reality is not true. But what you can also do is then we can uncover where we have specific gaps. So we might going to find out that our goals, and you think about the value creation, what value do we create for the users? Maybe it's just like not customer-centric. We only have business goals, making X% more revenue in our business. Yeah? So this is a good sign to actually rework our goal settings. Or we don't know about the impact that we're measuring. We don't have the tools and the techniques to understand if we're doing better or not. Or we just like need to test it with our users. We can't decide it now. And just like not building a feature and saying we need to go back to the drawing board is often way better than just like going for it. And suddenly you start to create an idea of where you are good at and where you're not so good at within your product creation process and your environment. So in the end, I think, I don't know, Epic B wins, but I think also the product manager wins, because what I've learned in this environment is you can gain a lot of trust if you have all this kind of knowledge and asking the right question to the management. And suddenly you can argue a lot why things are that way as you did, instead of just like trying to use some framework that is hard to follow. And also the company wins, because it's better to not just like do things that don't matter that much. Another kind of case is user research. So I mean, for user research, we might going to design a survey. And we're going to put a lot of questions into our survey. But the question is, what do we ask? What do we look for? And suddenly it's very easy, because we can take one of the elements and say, like, OK, this is segmentation information. We need that. Or we want to understand our value proposition and USPs or our user needs, or we want to uncover some kind of functionality that the people love the most. I mean, these are, for example, the product market fit engine from El-Hawari, which is going into this direction. And suddenly we can understand where we're going to get some value out of it. And we can also run interviews. And in the companies that I work with, this is like often very separated. There are some people doing a survey, you forget about it, you get your data all fine, and then you suddenly go into user interviews and just like go about that. But what you can also do is we can use this kind of things in order to understand what do we uncover from that user interview. And suddenly we are able to connect the dots that we haven't done before. So we can understand if the interview partner that we had represents a big target group, because we know about the segments. We're using the same segmentation criteria. And suddenly we understand if the feedback from that user is really relevant or maybe not so relevant. Or we can double check if the user needs are actually the same. So we might gonna put the survey on the wrong situation right now, or just like not fitting this one. So it might be a sign to say like, hey, we need to continue. We need to gather more data. So last but not least, there is the concept of ideas, which I also like a lot. And especially in the startup environment, this happens a lot, right? So magic ideas or bad ideas are just like ideas that are transferred into functionality. But we can do better. We can just like bounce it against goals and plans and filter bad ideas out before we actually bring it into functionality. We can even think it further and explain it a little bit more. So what is a good idea? A good idea ideally comes also from the user side or from the competition and the trends. Yeah, and this fuels the ideas, just like not came magically somewhere. But we can also continue and say like, okay, before we actually build it, this kind of great idea, let's check it out first and see if it works and how does it contribute to the bigger picture that we are trying to solve. So suddenly we can understand and design and explain to people how an ideation process should look like. So let me quickly get into how to use it actually. So the first thing, and I've mentioned this one already, is we can do some deep dives. We can take each element, ask ourselves, and reflect on what we have. We can build relationships. And the map that I've showed you, it doesn't have a fixed connection. You can take each of the elements and try to understand what happens if you combine both. Think about user needs on the one side and the user journey on the other side. Like for product managers, often user needs is what we want to uncover. But the user needs depend on the customer journey step. So we might going to have multiple user needs depending on where the customer actually is. And just like bringing the dots together really is very insightful, and it just like uncovers the very cool things. We can use it to aggregate a couple of things. So if you think about a concept like product strategy, which is a fluffy term for me, like show me your strategy, I don't know what that is. You can start to go through it and just like identify which are the elements that actually contributes or makes up a product strategy. And you can even start to overlap a couple of things. So you can start to see how a specific concept actually work together, how an OKR system is connected to the opportunity solution tree, or a product market fit engine survey is connected to whatever, right? So you can start to see how the things in the bigger concept actually work together. And how I go about it when I do it on a daily business, it's first I'm going to name the situation. Yeah, it could be anything. Could be, I don't know, I want to hire, what is product ops? I don't know what product ops is. Or product marketing management. What does it mean to actually have product marketing management? Or I want to become customer centric. What do I do about it? Product market fit. I don't know. And the next thing that I'm doing is just like going quickly through it and just like select the elements that I think are relevant for this case. Yeah, just like quick assessment, going through it and understanding, okay, this makes a role in here. And then I can start to connect the dots and see how the things relate to each other. What do I need to build? What do I don't need to build? And going about that one. And last but not least, I can then very simply drive conclusions about the weaknesses and the strengths that I have in my product creation process. So what is it in a nutshell? For me, it's a product map. It's a tool that I created just like that helps me in my daily business. And I think it's something that helps me to analyze, reflect, create, and communicate things in product management. It's a mental model to navigate exactly the complexity of building digital products. And it's supposed to be generic. I'm not saying that the elements are 100% complete. It can't be. So if you think that pricing should be in there, add it. If you think that your business model should be separated from the value creation, add it in there. It's okay, right? And it also is or has a claim to be as framework agnostic as possible. Because if you think about what do you do, how do you build products? You're naming things that are made up from a framework that we've used so much. And for me, it was important to understand, okay, why am I using this framework exactly? What is the core of this framework? And I tried to make it agnostic. And then, of course, it's kind of adaptable. So you can download this one. And very soon, I'm going to launch also a public Notion page where you can see the guiding questions. So if you follow me on LinkedIn or something, you will probably get then the update once it's there. Cool. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. So you're right in time. I didn't have to tackle you off stage, right?
She wanted to tackle me off the stage.
I was afraid to do it, actually. So I'm not sure if I had. And which questions do you have? We have the microphone in the center. Please just get up. And maybe you can put it a bit more in the center.
I'll align the microphone. Hi, I'm Eric from Trustlog. I'm a product designer. I love your map. I love all the Lego bricks that go into it. My question is, what advice do you have for a product team of 2, 1 designer and 1 product manager?
Yeah.
Do you
It's
do
the same.
everything? Do you do everything a little bit? Do you focus on some parts? Is it
So it doesn't matter like how big your team is. I mean, most of the things are just like something that you need to ask for and look for. And depending on the environment, if you see like, hey, I'm going to have, you can go quickly through it and say like, is it really relevant for me? Right? And then you can discard a couple of things if you say like, I really don't need to do a trend analysis because I think it's just like not the most important thing. Or maybe you figure out that your ideation process, there is no problem to solve. So it's not important to just like tackle this one right now. Yeah, but it actually works in a very, very small team, but it also works in larger teams. And at some point of time, you might even need to split the different maps if you want to understand specific product lines or a very specific market or whatever. So you can see how this kind of like separates like over the time. Yeah, but no, for me, it works also in small environments. We have a new startup, a new investment, 2 people with a pitch deck and some millions on the bank account want to build something. For me, I'm still going through this one and try to understand, okay, what do I need to do here? And it doesn't say it doesn't give anything about the maturity level of how you do it. It doesn't mean that you need to have a fully sophisticated tool to communicate your insights, right? A Google Doc can help just like to write it down. Maybe that's enough, right? So it doesn't need to be big. It's just like the work of a product manager to understand how much he wants to invest into it.
I think I was aiming at how to connect this to the actual deliverables to explain without losing a lot of velocity why you're doing this, how the balance is between prioritizing and mapping and actually doing the work.
Well, I mean, all these kind of examples that I had in here, and most of them actually came from specific failures that I saw or that I've did myself. I mean, I had companies that are going through the roof, right? Great problem solution fit, amazing uniqueness, but they totally forget about the value creation. So like after going big, they've understood, okay, fuck, I don't make any money. Like you can't never make this profitable because the numbers were not going to be right. And for me, it's so sad to invest so much time and effort and energy into building these kind of things and just like losing on very, very obvious things where you say like, you were not there yet. Or we have this in an investment in case, right? A founder gets a couple of million and then he says like, wow, the VC gave me money, so my idea must be great. But no, it's not great yet. The future might gonna be great, but it's your duty to understand how you bring it to there. How do you bring it to growth stage, right? And this is something where I just like want to align and make about myself, okay, where are we right now? What is the reality? And this kind of reflection on this thing just like helps me personally to actually not lose my personal direction and understand what's going to be my next step that I'm going to take. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think we have time for one more question. Just get up right behind and yes, to the microphone so that also that you're also in the video.
Yeah. Hi, I'm David. Thanks for presenting the map. What is your experience when you introduce the map to your startups? How do they react to it? Are they, wow, super happy finally? Or like, that might be hard to squeeze in the data in there? Maybe some stories.
I love that question. I'm not showing it to the startup and say like, this is my framework, this is how I work. I don't do that one. It's just like my personal mental model, and I share it with people, with product peers, where I say like, hey, this is how I use it, and this is how I deal without that one. But this is a very abstract model. It's very hard to apply and use and to understand. It's not so easy because there's a lot of, like, what does it actually mean? What does it do? And I'm just like taking the results and the output of it because I want to just like talk about what is really going on and not just saying, I use this framework and because of this framework, I think we need to do this and that. My argumentation is just like differently. I'm trying to just like have it in the back of my mind. I sometimes have it open on my second screen. And when I'm talking about it, I'm just like, hey, you know what? Just like asking the right questions, just like going about it. But I'm not using it, showing that this is the map. This is how I work. This is not the way I do it.
Is there another question? We have 1 minute left. Just get up.
So actually you answered it a bit already. So when it comes to hard stakeholders, I would say I would perform some of these exercises a bit together with them, because if you do it only for you, you will be a super tough, super fast guy. But if you have a super high decision maker on the other side, it could be that he feels, let me say, a bit overrun, overwhelmed, or whatever. Would that be an idea to put parts of it out and perform it together with a stakeholder?
Absolutely. Like this is like why I used to communicate things, but I'm not showing the full map and say like this is the map, this is where we are right now. This is not how I do it. I just like say, okay, you know what, this is how the ideation flow works. And this is what we are doing wrong, because what you do right now is taking the idea and want to have this implemented. So we should just like focus and make this, and this is like how I use it. I use it just like very sliced down in certain situations and just like put it into some kind of slide deck.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much. This was the last talk before the lunch break. So you can enjoy 1 hour of lunch now, meet the exhibitors, and take the time to network. Download the app if you haven't. This is your time to download the app. We will be back here at 1:15. Thank you so much, Tamer.
Thank you very much.
See you later. Bye.